what would I do to basically rebuild, get to, you know, 6 figures, 7 figures, 8, 9 figures? How would I build a company worth hundreds of millions? Is that the question?
That's the question.
Okay, thank you. If I were to go back to when I did have to start over, because I actually did, I was 41 years old when I had to start over again. I went through divorce. That is always tragically, mentally, and emotionally. I had 6 kids. So all of a sudden I find myself in a circumstance where I'm decimated financially. I mean, it wiped me out. And in your circumstance, particularly in the state that I was in, just the way the laws were written, it literally was easy for it to be a pretty one-sided thing and for me to start over. So my ex-wife got the nice big house with the gym in it, which I was happy that was there because then my kids had that stability over there. So as opposed to like having an axe to grind about that, I just had to accept my circumstance. My circumstance was that I got a cottage that we had not far from there on a lake that was 800 square feet, had a 35-gallon water tank. It was really old. And it only had 2 bedrooms, and I had 6 kids. So here I find myself being a dad, a single dad, 50% of the time because I had him half the time, living in this tiny little environment. I literally built beds in closets for my kids to sleep in. At that point, I needed the stability. And I had a job that was a high-paying job, and I had influence there, but I was running other businesses at the time. I was in side businesses going. I was so overwhelmed that I had to close down my side businesses because I didn't have time to take kids to soccer practice, take them to doctor's appointments, have birthday parties. And 6 kids is a lot to manage half the time without any help. And so I was just in a situation where I said, I can't sustain this anymore. I have to build my own company. I can't build these smaller businesses that I've been building. I have to build something big. I have to leave what I'm doing, but it was the only form of stability that I had. And if I leave what I'm doing, I'm going to be in a circumstance where I'm literally paying child support with no income. And the way the law is written, you can't just say, well, I don't have income anymore, so I can't pay the child support. They're like, you did that on purpose, brother. You got to pay it. So I was in a situation where I had to work as hard as I could to save up a certain amount of money to give myself a timeline and ask myself, how long could I go before I could take income? So I very rapidly started writing out, what is this company going to look like? I knew what the culture was going to look like. I knew that it was, maybe it could eventually become a large cap business, but that it was probably going to be in that mid-range, several $100 million range. It was a market that I had been in, so I was familiar with the size of those organizations and how they run. And also that really, if you effectively run them, you run them in a way that you're launching them to be the large company. But I knew that for me, I would probably exit before I actually went to that level and start diving into this particular passion of helping people build things too. I started literally by saying, what is the end in mind? The end in mind is that I want to build a great company. I want to experience and lead that company. Eventually I want to sell that company, and then I want to go on the passion of teaching and writing and speaking and helping people to follow their dreams. I also knew that I didn't want to just skip to that. Some people do that. Some people go, well, I'm just going to start doing it. And I had been doing that for years, but I wanted to go just like, frankly speaking, I wanted to just kick ass at such a level that when I sat in a room with people, they were like, okay, I want to listen to what he has to say, because it's not just theoretical, but he has actually built something that was effective. And that's not to say that many people haven't built things bigger, but I wanted to build something substantial enough that I could capture the attention of people with what I had accomplished, not just what my thoughts were. And also I wanted to have the track record and experience of being able to draw back in a conversation with somebody and say, well, I remember when I was in a meeting similar to that. I remember when we had a legal situation like that. I remember when we had an HR situation like that, a supply issue like that, an economic issue like that. And here's what we did to get through it. So beginning with the end in mind, I did those. And so I would come home and I would say, okay, this is the culture of the organization. This is what the product's going to provide. And I knew it would be some sort of like SaaS-oriented thing, or if it wasn't that, it was going to be some sort of, it had an emulation of subscription or at least long-term contracts somewhere or another. I wanted sustainability like that. And I also knew that I didn't want to really invent something. There are quite a number of famous people who invented something and then became wealthy because of it. But most people innovated on an idea that was already there. And that's what I wanted to do. And so every single day, I designed more and more of the company, or what it was going to look like. I just didn't know the product, and I'd put down a list of different products. I'd come home from the grind, I'd put the kids to bed, and I would just then look at this and think about it, and it was always on my mind. And then one day I was walking through the airport, and a friend of mine called and said that He had a friend whose brother sold ads for a mom and pop owned magazine in a certain town. And instantaneously, it was like love at first sight almost. I knew it. I was like, that is it. I mean, this is the peanut butter to my chocolate, okay? I now have the Reese's peanut butter cup, and I'm gonna do this. And I absolutely knew, I knew it. I knew I could take the idea of that model and I could make it times 1,000. And in fact, we ended up making it way more than 1,000, but I knew I could do it to that level. And then I found partners who I trusted, who I would be able to guide while I couldn't leave yet. And this was my strategy. I was like, okay, well, I can't build a company if I can't build the company because I'm doing this other thing, but I can't entirely leave yet because I have to pay child support and I have 6 kids to take care of. So I can't just do this heroic thing and leap off a cliff. I had to be practical about the situation. And most people do. They can't just, they have to be practical about it. At the time, I wasn't very familiar with raising money for business. Every single thing I did by rubbing 2 sticks together. Now, of course, having gone through private equity sales, acquiring companies and selling several businesses since then, I realized that I operated in a little bit of a naivete, but I think it was actually good for me because I didn't bring any debt upon the company. I didn't bring debt upon myself in doing it. And I found a way to get profit right away and then just fan the flames of that. And that would be another story on how I did that.